mynews.studio.
Picture a Sudanese teenager sitting in a tent on World Refugee Day, learning English from a borrowed phone. It brings up the question, can resilience actually change the story of displacement?
Today is June 12, 2025, World Refugee Day. More than 100 million people are displaced worldwide. When you look at the refugee situation now, what stands out to you most?
The numbers are hard to process, but for me, it's always the individual stories from Sudan, Ukraine, Burkina Faso. Each crisis has its own context, but what's constant is resilience. Take Sudanese refugees. Many end up in Chad, which already struggles with resources. Families are splitting a single meal, sometimes between two households.
And that's a big contrast with Ukrainian refugees. Many of them reach European countries with stronger economies and systems, so better access to healthcare, jobs, schools. But does that actually make integration easier for them compared to, say, Sudanese or Burkinabe refugees?
Not necessarily. Even with resources, the adjustment is tough. Language barriers, trauma, uncertainty about what comes next. But local efforts matter. In places like Poland and Germany, volunteers step in to help Ukrainians with things like school registration, job searches, just navigating daily life.
And if we look at West Africa, it's a different story again. Refugees from Burkina Faso often stay within the region. In Ghana or Côte d'Ivoire, host families sometimes open their homes, even if their own resources are limited. What do you think drives that kind of generosity?
It's sometimes shared history, sometimes just simple empathy. But international aid can only stretch so far. It's really local compassion and support that keep people going. That's often the difference between barely surviving and actually starting over.
So, the local response is as important as international aid. But what about the bigger picture? What helps refugees move from just surviving to really thriving?
A few things. Legal work opportunities are crucial. If people can work, they contribute and support themselves. Education is vital too. Digital tools, remote classes, language lessons. Expanding community sponsorships helps because it lets ordinary people get involved directly. And of course, more international funding, especially for host countries that are already stretched, so both refugees and locals can get healthcare, schooling, food.
Are there places where you see these ideas working already?
Yes, take Canada. Community sponsorship there has helped thousands of refugees settle in quickly. In Uganda, refugees are allowed to work and start businesses, and that's boosting the local economy. In Europe, digital education platforms are helping Ukrainian kids keep up with their studies, even while they're displaced.
So, the real challenge is scaling these solutions and making sure local communities aren't overwhelmed in the process.
Exactly. It really depends on political will, continued funding, and seeing refugees as people with skills and ambitions, not just recipients of help. The more we invest at the start, the bigger the benefits in the long run, for everyone.
And individual stories make the crisis real. Hearing about a Sudanese teenager learning English in a tent, or a Burkinabe mother starting a bakery in her host village, you can't ignore the potential in these lives.
That's why World Refugee Day matters. It's not about numbers. It's about people, their resilience, and the everyday acts of solidarity that can make all the difference.
So today's a reminder, the refugee crisis isn't something far away. It's a global challenge, and the solutions need both compassion and practical policy.
And hope and resilience aren't just concepts. They show up every day in millions of people rebuilding, learning, and finding ways to contribute wherever they find safety.
Thanks for listening. We talked about how refugees from Sudan, Ukraine, and Burkina Faso each face different challenges but share a drive to rebuild, and how local and global responses matter for their futures.
Thank you for joining us. This episode was brought to you by mynews.studio. You can try it now for free.